Little girl interrupts the funeral to tell the widow he killed my mama. What the security head found shocked everyone. Chapter 1: The Witness. The trash cans behind the Hargrove estate smelled like old roses and motor oil. 7-year-old Mia Chen had learned a long time ago that rich people threw away the most useful things: half-eaten sandwiches still in their wrappers, blankets folded neatly inside garbage bags as if someone felt guilty about discarding them, and once, an entire birthday cake with only one slice missing. She had eaten that cake over 3 days, rationing it like it was gold. Tonight she wasn't looking for food. Tonight she was hiding. The black SUVs had arrived at the estate just after 9 o'clock, sliding through the iron gates like shadows given weight and purpose. Mia had been curled behind the second industrial bin near the service entrance, the spot she always chose, because the kitchen staff never checked behind it and the security camera above it had been broken for 6 months. She knew this estate the way most children knew their own bedroom. Every corner, every blind spot, every unlocked window. Her mother, Lily Chen, had worked here. Had, past tense, a word that still cut like broken glass. Mia pulled her knees tighter to her chest and told herself to be still, be small, be invisible. She was good at that. She had been good at that since the night 3 weeks ago, when everything changed, since the night her mother didn't come home and nobody from the estate called to explain why. And when Mia walked to the front gate and asked the guard where her mama was, he looked through her like she was made of smoke. She had been sleeping in parks and doorways since then, circling back to the estate because this was the last place her mother had been alive. The last place that still smelled faintly of her, of the specific lavender soap the kitchen staff were required to use, of the coffee that always stained the hem of her mother's uniform. The sound of voices made her freeze. 2 men had stepped out through the service door, not 15 feet from where she crouched. They moved with the casual authority of people who owned the world and knew it. The taller one was dressed in a charcoal Italian suit that probably cost more than Mia's entire life. His face was sharp, handsome in the way that expensive things are handsome, all angles and deliberate polish. She recognized him from the photographs on the estate walls. Damien Hargrove, the eldest son, the heir. The second man was shorter, stockier, wearing the kind of suit that tried too hard. He had the look of someone who served powerful people and hated himself for enjoying it. Mia didn't know his name, but she had seen him before, always a half step behind Damien, always holding a phone. "The shipment confirmation," Damien said. His voice was quiet. That was the thing that frightened her, not the loudness of it, but the quietness. Dangerous things were always quiet. "Handled," the second man said. "Marcus confirmed it crossed the port this afternoon. No flags." Damien nodded, pulling a cigarette from a slim gold case. "And the other matter?" A pause. The second man glanced over his shoulder, a nervous habit that told Mia everything she needed to know about what was coming next. "Your brother's wife," the man began carefully. "Serena," Damien said the name the way you might say problem, flat, clinical. "She's been asking questions about the accounts, about what happened to the Chen woman." The words landed on Mia like a physical blow. The Chen woman. Her mother reduced to 2 words, spoken in the same tone as the shipment and the accounts. "She's smarter than Marcus ever was," Damien said, exhaling smoke into the night air. "Which makes her considerably more dangerous. My brother inherited her loyalty but not her intelligence. Tragic combination." "Do you want us to?" "I want it to look natural." Damien flicked the ash off the cigarette with one elegant gesture. "Serena has been grieving, hasn't she? The anniversary of her parents' accident. Perhaps the grief becomes overwhelming, a prescription error, a bath drawn too hot, something that doesn't generate questions." The stocky man nodded slowly. "The Hargrove Foundation gala is Saturday. She'll be there. It would be easy to." "Not at the gala." Damien's voice sharpened slightly. "I'm not an amateur. After Sunday morning, make it quiet." Another nod. The 2 men stepped back through the service door. For a long moment, Mia couldn't move. Her whole body had gone cold, in a way that had nothing to do with the night air. They killed her mama. She didn't fully understand the shipment or the accounts or any of the financial architecture of Damien Hargrove's crimes. But she understood make it look natural. She understood the Chen woman. She understood that the same man standing 15 feet from her had given the same kind of quiet, calm order 3 weeks ago, and her mother had never come home. And now they were going to do it to someone else. To Serena, whoever Serena was. Mia pressed her back against the cold metal of the bin and breathed. She was 7 years old and homeless and approximately 4 feet tall, and she had nothing, no phone, no money, no adult who would believe her, no home to go back to. But her mother had always told her something. On the hard nights, on the nights when the world seemed large and indifferent, Lily Chen had pulled her daughter close and whispered with the conviction of someone who had survived enough to mean it. Mia baby, the truth is the one thing nobody can take from you. It lives in your body. And one day, the right person will listen. She reached into her jacket pocket and closed her fingers around the one thing she still carried, a cracked, waterproof digital voice recorder, the kind used by journalists and students. Her mother had bought it at a second-hand market and given it to Mia as a birthday present, telling her to record the sounds of the city, to make stories out of what she heard. She pressed her thumb against the button. The small red light blinked on. Mia Chen held the recorder up in the darkness and waited, heart hammering, hands steady, because she had learned something else her mother always said. The brave thing and the scared thing are always the same thing, baby. You just have to do it anyway. She didn't have to wait long. Damien Hargrove stepped back through the service door alone, pressing his phone to his ear this time. "It's done," he said, "Sunday morning. The inheritance transfers to me automatically under the trust terms. Marcus inherits her share and Marcus does what he's told." A pause. Then, quietly, "Yes, just like the housekeeper." The red light blinked steadily in the dark. Mia pressed record, and the truth climbed inside the machine where nobody could take it. Chapter 2: The Tragedy. Serena Hargrove had been beautiful once in the effortless way of people who don't know they're being looked at. Now she was beautiful in a harder, more deliberate way, the beauty of a woman who has learned that rooms full of powerful men will always underestimate her, and who has decided to use that underestimation as a weapon. She stood at the edge of the Hargrove Foundation gala in a deep blue dress, and felt the room the way a chess player feels a board, every piece, every angle, every trap waiting to be sprung. Her husband Marcus Hargrove was across the room, laughing too loudly at something his brother had said. Marcus was not a bad man. That was the saddest and most complicated thing about him. He was simply not strong enough to be good. He loved his brother with the blind, self-destructive loyalty of a younger sibling who had never stopped needing approval, and Damien had spent 30 years learning how to use that love like a leash. Serena had been pulling on threads for 6 weeks. It had started with a discrepancy in the Foundation's charitable disbursement reports, a small one, the kind that would never raise flags unless you were specifically looking. And then another. And then the name. Lily Chen, domestic staff, terminated March 3rd. Except when Serena had quietly pulled the HR file, there was no termination letter, no severance, just a name that stopped appearing on the payroll, as if Lily Chen had simply ceased to exist. She had gone to Marcus. That had been her first mistake. Marcus had told her she was overworked, that grief made people see patterns that weren't there, that she should focus on the gala and leave the accounting to the professionals. He had told his brother about the conversation within the hour. She was certain of that now. She felt Damien's eyes on her from across the room, the way you feel a draft, a coldness that has no visible source. The gala ended at midnight. The Hargrove driver took her home. Marcus stayed. "One more drink, darling. Go ahead without me," and she let him. Because the shape of what was happening had become clear enough that she needed to move carefully. She had a plan. A small, fragile, incomplete plan, but a plan nonetheless. What she didn't have was a timeline. She discovered on Saturday night that the timeline was Sunday morning. The call came from a blocked number at 11:15 p.m. She almost didn't answer it. Mrs. Hargrove. The voice was a woman's, her head of security, Dana Reeves, and the specific tension in it made Serena's stomach drop. Don't speak. Don't react. Just listen. There's a car parked on the east service road of the estate. Black, no plates. It's been there since 9 p.m. and it's still running. I've checked the compound surveillance. Someone disabled 2 of the east cameras between 8 and 9. Serena set her champagne glass down with absolute steadiness. I see, she said, keeping her voice light and social, as if commenting on the decor. I've been with this family for 11 years, Dana said, and her voice had the weight of someone about to burn a bridge and willing to live with the ashes. I've kept my head down and done my job, but I pulled the archive footage from the night the Chen woman died, and I know what I saw, and I am not going to watch it happen again. There is a bag in the boot of my car with enough documentation to start an investigation. My car is in the lower parking structure, Bay 17. I'll be there in 10 minutes. If you want to walk away from this alive, be there in 9. The line went dead. Serena crossed the ballroom in the direction of the powder room, smiling at 2 trustees on the way. She slipped out through the caterer's exit. She was in Bay 17 in 7 minutes. Dana Reeves was already there, a compact woman in her 40s, with the steady eyes of someone who had made peace with what she was doing. She handed Serena a bag without ceremony. Copies of the surveillance footage from March 3rd, financial records I copied off the server, and Dana hesitated for the first time. There's something else. Something I've been trying to work out what to do with for 3 weeks. She reached into her jacket and produced a small device. A cracked digital voice recorder. A child gave it to me, Dana said. A little girl. She appeared at the service gate 4 days ago with nothing but this recorder and a piece of paper with my name on it. She said her mother told her that if something bad happened, she should find the woman in the security uniform who has kind eyes. She said her name is Mia. She said her mother worked here. Dana's jaw was tight. She said her mother is dead. Serena took the recorder with both hands. Where is the child now? I gave her food and hid her in the maintenance room near the east gate. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't send her to the police, not until I knew how deep this goes. Dana looked at her steadily. I think it goes deep, Mrs. Hargrove. Serena pressed play. The recording wasn't perfect. There was wind interference and the ambient noise of the estate at night, but the voices were clear enough. Damien Hargrove's voice, smooth and quiet and clinical. Make it look natural, just like the housekeeper. Serena stood in the parking structure and listened and felt something settle inside her, not calm, exactly, but the specific, crystalline clarity that arrives when the thing you feared becomes the thing you know. Fear is fog. Knowledge is solid ground. We have maybe until morning, Serena said. Yes. Then we can't be here when morning comes. She looked at Dana. Can you get us out, all 3 of us? Dana nodded once. I've been planning it since Thursday. There's a route, but Mrs. Hargrove, she paused. If we leave tonight, you can't come back as yourself. Not until there's enough to finish this publicly. Damien will call it a breakdown, a disappearance. He might call it a suicide. Serena absorbed this. And the little girl. Dana's expression shifted into something complicated. She has nobody. Her mother's records show no emergency contacts, no family. If we leave her. We're not leaving her, Serena said simply. It was not a complicated decision. It was perhaps the least complicated decision of the entire night. They went back for Mia together. The little girl was sitting on an upturned crate in the maintenance room, eating crackers from a packet Dana had left her. Her dark eyes steady and watchful in a way that broke something open in Serena's chest, the absolute seriousness of a child who has been forced to understand that the world is not safe. and has decided to stay in it anyway. Mia looked at Serena for a long moment. Then she said, "You're the lady he was going to hurt." "Yes," Serena said. "Did you hear the recording?" "I did." Mia nodded, as if this confirmed something she had already decided. "My mama said the truth finds the right person eventually. I think you're the right person." Serena crouched down to meet her eye level. She reached out and tucked a piece of dark hair behind the child's ear with the careful gentleness of someone handling something precious. "I think your mama was very wise," Serena said quietly, "and I think you're very brave. Are you willing to come with us?" Mia picked up her recorder, turned it over in her hands once, and slipped it back into her pocket. "Yes," she said, "but I want to make sure he goes to jail." "So do I," Serena said, "so do I." They left through the service exit at 12:47 a.m. By 2 in the morning, a black sedan registered to a Shell company later traced back to Damien Hargrove's network, ran a red light on Millbrook Road, and a car matching Serena Hargrove's vehicle was reported as having gone off the overpass embankment. By 3 in the morning, Marcus Hargrove was receiving a phone call about his wife. By 4 in the morning, Damien Hargrove was pouring himself a glass of very good scotch in the library of the estate, and his face was arranged into the appropriate expression of grief. The expression did not reach his eyes. It never had. Chapter 3: The Alliance. They drove for 4 hours. Dana had a contact A name spoken carefully, in the way you speak names that represent debts and trust in a small coastal city 300 miles from the Hargrove estate. The contact was Vincent Okoro, a former federal investigator who had left the Bureau under circumstances that made him unwilling to work within the system, but extremely motivated to work against the people who had made the system work for them. He lived in a narrow house 3 blocks from the water, with a converted basement office that smelled of old files and strong coffee. He answered the door at 5 a.m. without any apparent surprise, as if women faking their deaths and arriving on his doorstep with homeless children and encrypted hard drives was simply how Tuesdays went. "You look like you need coffee," he said to Serena. "I need more than coffee," she said. "Coffee first," Vincent said. "Then we talk about what you're going to need." They sat around his kitchen table as dawn broke over the water. Serena, Dana, Vincent, and Mia, who had fallen asleep in the car and been carried inside by Dana, and who now sat upright at the table drinking hot chocolate with the focused determination of a child trying very hard not to fall asleep again. Because she understood, in the way children who have lived hard lives understand things, that this was an important moment, and she needed to be present for it. Vincent listened without interrupting. He had the quality, Serena noticed, of a person who understood that the most useful thing you could do in many situations was simply stop talking and hear what was in front of you. When Serena finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and picked up Mia's recorder. "May I?" he asked, directing the question to Mia herself, not to the adults. Mia considered him the particular, solemn evaluation of a child deciding whether an adult was trustworthy. Then she nodded. Vincent pressed play. He listened to the recording 4 times. By the second listen, his expression had settled into something flat and very still. The expression, Serena imagined, of a man who had spent a career learning to contain his reactions to terrible things and was currently containing one. By the 4th listen, he set the recorder down on the table with deliberate care. "Damien Hargrove," he said. "Yes." "I've been watching the Hargrove Foundation's financial movements for 2 years, Vincent said. The port shipments, the charitable disbursement irregularities, the Shell company network. I have a great deal of evidence of financial crime. What I have never had," he looked at Mia, "is a direct voice recording implicating Damien Hargrove in an order to commit murder." The room was very quiet. Mia straightened slightly in her chair. She said, My mama's name was Lily Chen. She worked in the kitchen. She found something she wasn't supposed to find, didn't she? Vincent looked at her steadily. I believe so, he said. I think she may have accessed financial documents during her work at the estate, and I think that when Damien discovered it, he decided she was a liability. He said it directly, without softening it, because he had looked at the child and correctly identified that she would rather have the truth than the comfortable shape of a lie. I'm very sorry about your mother. Mia processed this for a moment. She used to say the truth lives in your body, Mia said quietly. She was carrying it. So was I. Now you're carrying it too. She looked around the table. We just have to find enough people to carry it so he can't make it disappear. Vincent looked at Serena. Serena looked at Vincent. She's not wrong, Dana said dryly, refilling her coffee. The next 8 days were the most carefully constructed days of Serena's life. Vincent had contacts: forensic accountants, investigative journalists, a prosecutorial attorney named Claudia Marsh who had been building a financial crimes case against the Hargrove Foundation's network for 18 months, and who arrived at Vincent's narrow house on the 3rd day with 2 associates, and a laptop full of evidence that, combined with what Serena and Dana had brought, began to build into something that could no longer be ignored or buried. Serena herself was officially dead. The Hargrove PR team had issued a statement about the tragic accident. Marcus had given a brief, tearful interview that Serena watched on Vincent's laptop and felt only a complicated, distant grief over, not because she didn't believe his tears were real, but because she understood now that Marcus Hargrove had been lost to his brother long before she had arrived, and the love between them had never had the shape she'd once hoped it might. She grieved him quickly and moved forward. Mia, during these 8 days, did something that none of the adults had quite anticipated. She became essential. It wasn't just the recording, though the recording was the foundation of everything. It was Mia herself. She had spent months circling the Hargrove estate, invisible in the way that homeless children are rendered invisible by the specific blindness of the wealthy. She had watched and listened, and remembered with the extraordinary precision of a child who had nothing else to do but pay attention. She remembered delivery schedules that matched Vincent's port shipment records. She remembered a conversation between 2 estate guards that corroborated a date that Claudia Marsh's financial trail had been trying to establish. She remembered the face of a man who had visited the estate 3 times in the month before her mother died, a face she identified from a photograph Claudia produced as a mid-level port official who had been on the Hargrove payroll. Dana watched the child lay out her memories in response to the attorney's careful questions and leaned over to Serena and said quietly, "She's been collecting evidence for months without knowing that's what she was doing." Her mother taught her to listen, Serena said. She listened. On the 7th day, Mia was sitting cross-legged on the floor of Vincent's office while the adults worked around her, and Serena sat down beside her with 2 cups of hot chocolate and a question she had been carrying all week. "What do you want?" Serena asked. "When this is over, what do you want?" Mia wrapped her hands around the mug and thought about it with the genuine seriousness of someone who had not been given the option of wanting things for a long time. "I want him to go to jail," she said, "for my mama. I want people to know her name." "What else?" A long pause. "I want somewhere to sleep that doesn't smell like trash," Mia said finally, so quietly that it nearly disappeared. "I want to go to school. I want." She stopped. "You can say it," Serena said gently. Mia looked up at her. Her dark eyes were very steady, very direct, and very careful, the eyes of a child who had learned that hope was an expensive thing, and who was trying very hard not to spend more than she could afford. "I want someone to come home too," she said. Serena sat with that for a moment. Then she put her arm around the child's shoulders, and Mia leaned against her with the tentative carefulness of someone learning, very slowly, that it was all right to lean. "Let's finish this first," Serena said, "and then we'll talk about what comes next." On the 8th day, Claudia Marsh made a phone call. "We're ready," she said. "We have enough. We need a stage." Vincent said, "There's a Hargrove Foundation press conference on Friday. Damien is announcing a new charitable initiative. Cameras from 12 outlets, 4 major networks live stream." A pause. "That'll do," Claudia said. Chapter 4: The Reveal. The Hargrove Foundation annual press conference was the kind of event that dressed itself in philanthropy. The way certain buildings are clad in glass, giving the impression of transparency, while concealing everything within. The auditorium of the Meridian Grand Hotel was full. 12 press outlets, 4 network cameras, 150 invited guests from the city's financial and philanthropic ecosystem, all there to watch Damien Hargrove announce the Lily Chen Memorial Education Scholarship, a cynical, breathtaking piece of theater, nomming the fund after the woman he had ordered killed, as if grief was something he could wear as fashion. Serena had watched the press release from Vincent's house and felt something cold and absolutely focused move through her. He named it after her. The audacity of it wasn't even shocking anymore. It was simply clarifying. Damien Hargrove took the stage at 2 p.m. He was perfectly composed, dark suit, silver tie, the slight, practiced grief of a man performing sorrow before a sympathetic audience. His hair was impeccably arranged. His hands, Serena noticed on the live feed being monitored from a secure room 3 floors above the auditorium, were completely still. "The Hargrove Foundation has always believed," he began, his voice warm and carrying, "that our greatest responsibility is to those who have been forgotten, to the invisible people who make our world function and are so rarely acknowledged for it. The Lily Chen Memorial Scholarship exists to honor one such person, a woman who worked within our family home with dedication and quiet dignity." In the green room 2 floors up, Serena stood in front of a mirror and breathed. She was wearing a slate-gray dress, her hair pulled back. She looked nothing like the soft-edged, socially graceful woman she had been at the gala. She looked, she thought, exactly like what she had become over the last 8 days. A woman with nothing left to lose and a great deal of evidence in her hands. Beside her, Mia stood in a navy dress that Dana had bought her 2 days ago, the first new item of clothing Mia had owned in months. She was very still and very serious. She had asked to be present for this. She had asked to be on stage. Every adult in the room had looked at one another, and then at this 7-year-old child who had survived 3 weeks on the streets, who had walked into a lion's den with a cracked recorder, who had looked at Damien Hargrove's world from inside a garbage can, and decided that the truth was more important than her safety. None of them had been able to tell her no. "You understand," Claudia Marsh had said gently, crouching down to Mia's level, "that it might be frightening. There will be a lot of cameras, a lot of people." "I know," Mia said. "You don't have to speak, you can just stand there." "I want to speak," Mia said. "I want to say my mama's name, her asterisk name, not the way he says it." Claudia had looked at her for a long moment. "All right," she said. Downstairs, Damien was reaching the emotional peak of his prepared remarks, his voice dropping into the particular frequency of performed sincerity. "And it is my hope that through this scholarship, Lily Chen's memory will continue to open doors for young people who might otherwise." The auditorium doors opened. Not the main doors, the side access doors, the ones used by foundation staff. Through them walked Claudia Marsh's, 2 federal agents in plain clothes, and Vincent Acoro, whose face was known in certain financial crime circles, and whose presence in any room tended to clarify the temperature significantly. The cameras swiveled. Damien Hargrove's voice stopped mid-sentence. And then Serena walked through the center doors. The ripple that went through the crowd was audible, a collective exhale of approximately 150 people, simultaneously revising their understanding of the situation. Several journalists were already raising phones before she had taken 10 steps. A network anchor near the front was speaking rapidly and quietly into an earpiece. Serena walked to the stage with perfect steadiness. Behind her, holding Dana Reeves' hand, came Mia. The room was very quiet now. Damien Hargrove stood at the podium and did something that, Serena thought, was the most honest thing she had ever seen him do just for a single second, before his composure reassembled itself. His face showed the thing underneath. The thing he kept buried under the architecture of charm and power and deliberate performance. Fear. Then it was gone and the mask was back, and he said with extraordinary smoothness, "Serena, my God, you're alive." Serena said pleasantly, stepping up onto the stage. "I know, disappointing for some." She turned to face the room. "My name is Serena Hargrove," she said, her voice carrying clearly to the back of the auditorium and to every microphone and camera pointed at her. 5 days ago, I was declared dead following a car accident on Millbrook Road. I am here to clarify that the accident was not an accident. I am also here to provide evidence in cooperation with federal investigators and prosecutorial attorney Claudia Marsh concerning a pattern of criminal activity conducted by the Hargrove Foundation's chairman, Damien Hargrove, including financial fraud, conspiracy, obstruction, and the ordering of at least 2 murders. The auditorium erupted. Damien stepped forward, his voice rising above the noise. She's clearly in distress. She's been through a traumatic. The recording, Serena said clearly, nodding to Vincent. The auditorium's speaker system, patched into Vincent's laptop through the hotel's own tech infrastructure, by a contact who had been waiting for this moment for 48 hours, filled the room with sound. Damien Hargrove's voice, unmistakable, precise. "Make it look natural, Sunday morning, just like the housekeeper." The room froze. And then Mia stepped up beside Serena. She was very small on the large stage. She stood under the lights with the complete stillness of a child who has decided exactly what she is going to do and is simply doing it. She looked out at the cameras, at the crowd, at the journalists with their microphones suddenly extended toward her, and she found Damien Hargrove's eyes across the stage. She held them. "My name is Mia Chen," she said, her voice small but absolutely clear in the silent room. "My mama's name was Lily Chen. She worked in the kitchen of the Hargrove estate. She found something she wasn't supposed to find, and she pointed at Damien with the simple directness of a child who has not yet learned to be indirect about truth. He had her killed, and then he put her name on a scholarship as if that made it better." She reached into the pocket of her navy dress and produced the cracked recorder. "I recorded him," she said, "outside the service door. 3 weeks after my mama died. I hid behind the trash cans because nobody ever sees me there, and I recorded everything." She set the recorder down on the podium. "My mama said the truth lives in your body," Mia said. "She was right. It lived in mine for 3 weeks. Now it's here." She looked at the cameras steadily. "Now everybody can carry it." The room was completely silent for 3 seconds. Then it was the loudest room Serena had ever stood in. Damien Hargrove made one move toward the side exit, which told every person in the room everything they needed to know about innocence and guilt, and was intercepted by both federal agents before he reached the first step. He was read his rights in front of 12 press outlets, 4 network cameras, and 150 witnesses. His hands, for the first time, were not still. Marcus Hargrove, sitting in the 3rd row where Damien had placed him as a grief prop, sat with his head in his hands for a long time. Then he stood up. He walked to the stage, and he looked at Serena, and his face had the specific stripped-back quality of a man from whom all the things he used to hide behind had been removed at once. "I didn't know," he said. His voice cracked on the word no. "I believe you," Serena said quietly. "That doesn't mean you're not responsible for what you ignored." He nodded. He looked as if something inside him had broken, and also, perhaps, as if something inside him was relieved that it had finally broken. "I'll cooperate," he said, "with everything, all of it." Serena looked at him for a long moment. "I know," she said, "that's all I'm asking." Chapter 5: The Family. There is a specific quality to the morning after everything changes. Serena noticed it first as light, the pale, early light of a city that had kept moving while she was busy surviving, that had gone on conducting its ordinary business of coffee and traffic and conversations, while she was in basements and parking structures and narrow coastal houses, building the architecture of truth out of recordings and financial documents and the testimony of a 7-year-old child. She sat in the window of the hotel room that Claudia Marsh's firm had arranged something clean and anonymous and very far from the Hargrove estate, and watched the light, and felt the specific, disorienting spaciousness of a life whose next chapter had not yet been written. 3 weeks. It had been 3 weeks since the gala, since the parking structure, since Dana's phone call and the child in the maintenance room with the crackers and the cracked recorder. It felt simultaneously like 3 months and 3 hours. Damien Hargrove was in federal custody pending a bail hearing that his attorneys were already publicly calling *preliminary. They were wrong about that, and everyone who had looked at the evidence now in prosecutorial hands knew it, but it would take time, the grinding, institutional time of due process, which was not elegant but was, Serena believed, necessary. Claudia Marsh had laid out a timeline of approximately 14 months to trial. 14 months. Serena could wait 14 months. Marcus had entered into a full cooperation agreement with the federal investigation, which was a complicated development that Serena was choosing to hold with both grief and something like relief. His testimony, combined with everything they had gathered, made Claudia Marsh speak about the case in the specific, careful way of an attorney who is trying not to exhibit overconfidence, while privately certain that conviction was inevitable. The Hargrove Foundation's assets were frozen pending the investigation. 14 employees had been interviewed. The port official Mia had identified from the photograph had been arrested the morning after the press conference. The Lily Chen Memorial Scholarship had been quietly dissolved, and Serena had made a single, private call to ensure that the name Lily Chen would instead appear on a real memorial, a small, permanent installation in the public park, 3 blocks from the estate, where a woman who had been reduced to the housekeeper would be allowed to have her full name and her full story. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was true, and true things compounded over time in ways that false things couldn't. She heard the knock at the connecting door at 7:15 a.m. "Come in," she said. Mia appeared in the doorway in the oversized pajamas that Dana had bought her dark hair loose around her shoulders, holding her hot chocolate in both hands with the careful ceremony she brought to all things she valued. She padded across the room and climbed up onto the window seat beside Serena with the quiet confidence of a child who has been told she is allowed to take up space and is slowly, carefully beginning to believe it. They sat together for a while and watched the city light and didn't say anything, because some mornings don't require words. Then Mia said, "Are you going to be okay?" Serena looked at her. "Why do you ask?" "Because you looked at Marcus a lot yesterday when you watched the news coverage," Mia said, with the particular observational accuracy that had made her such an extraordinary witness. "You look sad about him. Different sad than about your mama and daddy. This sad is more complicated." Serena was quiet for a moment. "It is more complicated," she agreed. "He wasn't a bad man. He just wasn't strong enough to be good. That's a different kind of sad." Mia considered this with the patience of someone who understood that some truths required turning over before they settled. "My mama used to say that being not bad isn't the same as being good," she said finally. "She said it's a choice you have to keep making every day, and some people are too tired to keep making it." "Your mama," Serena said, was one of the wisest people I've never met. Mia smiled a real smile, the kind that had begun appearing more frequently over the last week, that arrived suddenly and completely and lit her face from within like a lamp turned on. She would have liked you, Mia said. She liked people who didn't look away from hard things. Serena felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that was adjacent to grief, that held both the missing and the presence at once. That was the specific emotional territory of love that has to coexist with loss. Mia, she said carefully, I want to talk to you about something, about what happens next. Mia looked at her with the steady, careful attention she brought to important things. Claudia has arranged for a child welfare advocate to be assigned to your case, Serena said. There will be a process, legal, formal, with proper assessments and procedures. It isn't fast, and it isn't simple, and there will be adults asking you questions and evaluating things, which I imagine you'll find somewhat tedious. Why will they be evaluating things? Mia asked. Because Serena paused, because I want to begin the process of becoming your guardian, legally, officially, if that's something you want. The room was very quiet. Mia turned this over in the particular, methodical way she turned over important things. You want to be my family, she said. I want to give you a home, Serena said, if you want it. If you're willing to build something new with me, I'm not going to pretend it won't be complicated or that it'll look like what you always imagined. But I can promise you that it will be honest, and I can promise you that you will not be invisible. Not ever. Not in my house. Mia looked out the window for a long moment. Dana would still be around, she said. Dana has agreed to stay on, yes. A pause. She refuses to leave until she's satisfied you're settled, which given her personality will probably be sometime around your 18th birthday. Mia's smile arrived again, sudden and complete. And Vincent? Vincent is not a warm man by nature, Serena said, but he's been asking about you every day. I think you might have broken something open in him. He mentioned something about helping you with schoolwork, specifically mathematics, which he seems to believe is the foundation of all justice. Mia giggled a pure, entirely childlike sound that startled them both slightly, as if the giggle itself was surprised to be there. I'd like to go to school, she said, a real school, with a uniform and a lunch box. A lunch box is absolutely achievable. And a dog, Mia said, tilting her head as if testing the limits of what was achievable. Serena paused. We can discuss a dog. My mama always wanted a dog, Mia said more quietly. She said when we had our own place someday we'd get one, a big one. She wanted to call it *evidence. There was a beat of silence, and then Serena laughed a real laugh, surprised out of her, and Mia laughed too, and they sat in the window together in the early morning light and laughed about a hypothetical dog named Evidence, and it was the most real thing Serena had felt in a very long time. 6 weeks later, the morning was ordinary in the way that the best mornings are ordinary. The apartment was 3 blocks from a good school. It was not large, but it had high windows that let in the particular late morning light that Serena had spent the last month learning to love. There were books on shelves, and a kitchen that smelled of coffee, and on the refrigerator a drawing in orange crayon of 3 figures labeled SCRENA, MIA, and Evidence, soon. Dana was at the kitchen table with coffee and a newspaper, performing the specific version of I'm not hovering that involved aggressively reading the same paragraph for 10 minutes. Vincent was in the living room helping Mia with mathematics homework with the focused solemnity of a man engaged in a project of global importance, which was how he approached most things. If the total evidence across 3 cases is 47 documents, Mia was reading from the worksheet with elaborate gravity, and each case has a different number. It's a word problem, Vincent said. They're never actually about the topic they claim to be about. Is that true of regular problems too? Mia asked. Vincent considered this. Yes, he said, usually. Serena stood in the kitchen doorway with her coffee and watched the ordinary, extraordinary architecture of her specific, improbable, reconstructed life, and felt the thing that had been absent for so long she had forgotten its texture. Not just safety, not just justice. Home. Through the window she could see the city moving, the traffic and the pedestrians, and the particular light of a morning that was just a morning, ordinary and sufficient, not marked by crisis or grief or the ticking clock of someone else's plan. She thought about Lily Chen, briefly, as she did every day about the woman she had never met but had come to know through her daughter, through the quiet wisdom Mia carried like an inheritance, through the things a child says in the dark when she is learning to trust again. The truth lives in your body. It did. It had. Through 3 weeks of sleeping behind trash cans, and through a funeral and a fake death in a parking structure, and a basement full of evidence, and a press conference stage under the lights, the truth had lived in a small body in a cracked recorder, had waited for the right person, and had arrived exactly where it needed to arrive. Mia looked up from her homework and found Serena in the doorway. "You're thinking about my mama," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Serena said simply. Mia nodded. Her expression was the complex, mature, specifically wise expression she wore when she was managing the coexistence of grief and peace, which she did. Serena had learned, with a grace that most adults spent lifetimes trying to achieve. "She would have wanted this," Mia said. "She wanted me to have somewhere to belong. She always said a person can survive almost anything if they have someone who's looking for them when they don't come home." Serena set her coffee down on the counter. She crossed the room and sat beside Mia at the table. "I'll always be looking for you," she said. "That's not going to change." Mia looked at her for a long, serious moment. Then she picked up her pencil and turned back to her mathematics, and the expression on her face was not the tight, careful, survival-focused expression of a child managing the world alone. It was the expression of a child who is simply doing her homework in a safe place, in the company of people who see her, in a home that holds her name. It was the most ordinary thing in the world. It was the most extraordinary thing Serena had ever witnessed. Dana refilled her coffee. Vincent corrected a calculation with quiet satisfaction. The morning light moved across the floor. Outside, the city continued its business, indifferent and ongoing, as cities do. Inside, on the refrigerator, a drawing in orange crayon waited patiently for the day the family would become complete. Below the 3 figures, in careful, slightly crooked letters, Mia had written a 4th word. Not a name exactly. More of a promise. Someday. And for Lily Chen, who taught her daughter that the truth is the one thing nobody can take from you, she was right. She was absolutely right. Please subscribe, like, share. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. The end. Next.